Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's lovely to be in Sydney tonight and see the lightning flash and bringing light to otherwise darkened skies, as Monet did a century or more ago. And it's particularly happily an invitation for me to accept to come here to be with Peter Kundal, who's one of my mentors and has been a phenomenal mainstay for humanity and the environment through all the years I've been in Tasmania. And to follow the last invitation, which was to come here during the exhibition of Pizarro paintings. And at the time I spoke about Recherche Bay in Tasmania, which was then threatened, the peninsula where the French explorers d'Entrecasteaux and two ships full of scientists came upon Recherche Bay after a battering crossing the Indian Ocean in 1792. And they loved the place so much, after repairing their ships, they circumnavigated Australia and decided to go back to the southern tip of what they thought was then Australia, Tasmania. And this time they ran into the Palawa people, the Indigenous people, and spent a week on the shores there feasting, having musical interludes with the Indigenous people, even an athletics contest, before sailing away with great grief on both sides, but having exhibited how people of totally different cultures, religions, beliefs, fashions, could, with understanding and give and take, appreciate each other and gain from that. And at the time we thought there was little hope for Recherche Bay and its peninsula. But out of the woods, so to speak, came Dick Smith and Pip Smith, and they gave $2 million to a campaign we'd got to raise public monies, and people from here donated, thank you very much. And the peninsula was saved. So that struck a bell when we were just looking at Monet, and Terence pointed out that in his depiction of poplars at Giverny, they were in the neighbourhood, these poplars, and the landowner was going to chop them down. So Monet, who had by this time been recognised and was making money, bought the land and saved the poplars. It must have been in the French blood at the time, but I asked Terence, did the man who sold the land and made the money go to Tasmania, where there's a massive industry at the moment in cutting down, destroying, eliminating nature? And I'll come back to that in a moment. To read about, but particularly to see Monet and his fellow Impressionists, and what a stunning exhibition this is, and how proud this gallery can be to present this to the people of Australia, not least the lucky denizens of Sydney, because it's something that is special in the world. But so is that man, because he decided he wouldn't settle for the salon and the judgment of the times. And in my terminology, the rather gloomy depiction of the world as it was, but saw the light and went for it. And out of that, he was a driving force and one of the creators of Impressionism, which people are flocking here now to enjoy. And I think central to that is the sunlight and the lifting out of this rather gloomy depiction of the beautiful living fabric of the planet into the sunlight that came with the Impressionists. And Monet says, I paraphrase, if you glimpse one piece of nature, you see the lot. And I don't think he was just speaking about at that time, but he was talking about the whole sweep of time itself. Because, you know, we are just bubbles in the brook of time. We have life given to us and we hand it on. And the whole fascinating universe moves on. And what is it? The scientists tell us it's 14 billion years of evolution from the Big Bang. We might all live long enough to hear a new theory, but that's the best one at the moment. And somehow, out of this extraordinary circumstance which we live in, unfolded through cosmological and then geological and then biological and now psychological or mental evolution, the universe found a way to reflect upon itself, to understand itself, to appreciate itself, and to enjoy itself. And so far as we know, the only speck in the whole of the universe where this has happened is our planet Earth. And the entity through which this has happened is Homo sapiens, we 7 billion big mammals who congregate like this to appreciate each other and this intellectual unfolding. And one of the big questions that confronts us, well, I think Steve Hawking had on his website a couple of years back the question, do you think people will exist in 100 years? You know, nuclear weapons, climate change, $1 trillion a year on armaments. How can we survive it? And the crudity with which politics is governed. This system whereby those who are the least sensitive climb the ladder the best and take power the easiest because they're less worried about the people whose fingers they're treading on to get there. Part of this universal setup. We can't change it, but we can certainly try to find other ways. And Hawkins said, well, he got 25,000 responses. They were evenly split between yes and no, and everybody waited to hear what he had to say, and he said, I don't know. But I theorise that it may be, given the 14 billion years and the hundreds of billions of constellations, including billions, multiply it, of galaxies, that there must be life out there, or must have been life out there somewhere else. But maybe it's every time it gets to this stage where it can start to tinker, has choice and can change its life circumstance, it implodes. It pulls the rug from under itself. And here is the central question facing humanity in 2009. Do we have the collective intelligence, this universal intellect that is built into us, to be able to, with humility, preserve this one earth upon which we entirely depend? Or do we respond to cruder reflexes. Self-preservation, self-aggrandisement, me firstness, so manifest in the current age of materialism that we pull the rug from under it. Well, back of envelope calculation, 7 billion people now, 10 billion, 9 billion by mid-century, all of them wanting to come up to our standard of consumption. You need 3 more planets and we don't have it. But the world is acting as if we did. And there is now enormous political action to rescue us from the meltdown on Wall Street. But there is no political recovery plan, let alone avoidance plan, for disastrous climate change, overpopulation and impossible demands upon this living planet's fragile mantle and its limited resources. This is why I'm a Green. I don't believe current politics, whatever the old dimension is, can change. As Petra Kelly, the great German Green, said to me here in Australia in 1984, they'll put on green spots in opposition and they'll lose them in government. Well, back to the light. Monet wanted to go for the light. This is in the Industrial Revolution. And he saw the force, the renewal, the joy in nature in the midst of all that. And he was ostracised from his contemporaries and the experts and the power elite of the day because he didn't conform. Later on, by the way, when he became enormously powerful and famous and was earning a lot of money, not least because of the American and Japanese and non-local art markets, he said, do those who now support us understand us any better than those who used to insult us? Well, I think the answer to that is yes, because there is something intrinsically attractive about seeing the light in the gloom, about insisting that the shadows don't predominate, about the enormous attractiveness of the light, even on the gloomiest snowy day, that gives this planet life and that comes from the sun 93 million miles away, the nearest we need any nuclear reactor to be to our planet, and which Obama said this morning. We've got to deal with the nuclear proliferation and with climate change. He didn't use that word, but that's what he meant, which is threatening all of humanity. And we've got to use the sun, the wind and the soil to produce our energy. I must ask the Rudd government if they think any of those factors should supplant the coal industry, which makes us the biggest coal exporter on the planet, and along with forest destruction, the biggest producers of greenhouse gases on the planet in 1909. And by the way, with Forrest, Mr Rudd said on the podium during the last election campaign, and he's carrying it out, when it comes to forest policy in Tasmania, I am 100%, quote unquote, with John Howard. And to show that that's so, he has since the election promised $100 million to the Tasmanian loggers for infrastructure and sent $200 million to the Indonesians to stop their logging, to help settle down their firebombing of their forests. Now, as we're here tonight, there's another young person locked on to the living fabric of the planet in the upper Florentine forests of Tasmania, World Heritage Value forests, ancient, untouched ecosystem, and straight through the middle of that is being driven at your expense, $36 million from the federal government, according to the Wilderness Society, for roading in Tasmania's native forests, a bulldozer for Forestry Tasmania and Guns Limited to rip the centre of that World Heritage Forest asunder. World falling market at the moment, so they're only going to log 10 hectares now. But so in future, they'll be able to log all of it that's commercially available, and we're told, I got a letter from Mr Rudd this week about it, that it's sustainable forestry in Tasmania. Now, the actual truth of the matter is, besides destroying, and the federal court found this when it looked at it for 35 days 2 years ago, the habitat of rare and endangered species, like the Tasmanian wedge-tail, with a wingspan of more than 2 metres, bigger than its mainland cousin, and one of the 6 biggest raptors, eagle-like birds on the planet. Their habitat is being logged from under them, and the court found they are being driven to extinction and put an injunction to stop it. But it was very quickly overruled by a superior court who said, yes, but there's a legal technicality over here which allows them to do it, and to quote the 3 judges, the rare animals facing extinction must suffer to compromise with the needs of industrial logging. Really? In the wealthiest per capita for resources nation on the face of the planet. And all it did was show that we are still in some of the gloom and the shadows of a self-oriented humanity, a cultural warp which is neither sustainable or excusable. I wrote a letter to our great-grandchildren over Christmas, some 2,000 words, just to explain to them, we're sorry, we know what's going on, we know how it's going to be for you, but consider how politically difficult it would be to change to put you first. You have got to understand us and accept that we can't help ourselves even though we know about it. Now, that's a bit tongue-in-cheek, because I wouldn't be in a greenie, and my heart wouldn't be with those folk in the forests who are going to be taken off to jail or to massive fines, by the way, if I felt that were the case. Let me just say that as a campaigning environmentalist and senator in this wonderful democracy of Australia, I find history not just full of great sadness and cruelty, but with nodules of absolute inspiration. The suffragettes, the people who finished off slavery, the people who got kids out of mines and got them into schools, and the Monets, these artistic geniuses who, through their own expression, lift us human beings to believe that we can dance in the light, and we can give, and we can think through the nature we see now of nature for all times, and that we can want to bequeath this on to those coming generations so that they may enjoy this stupendously marvellous planet which gives us all we are: life, inspiration, spiritual fulfilment, creativity, adventure, to those just like us who will want to sit in places just like this 500, 5,000, 50,000 years from now and marvel at our place in the universe and wonder at the power we have to explore more of it, enjoy it more, and make sure this living experiment and awareness and conscience on the planet goes on and on and on, as we, inevitably, if we're humble about it, will go on to explore marvels in the universe that we can only guess at and wonder about right now. Now, Monet went through purgatory. He had to accept that he change or that he would potentially go nowhere, be no one, and end up changing nothing. But he had an idea he believed in. And he had a creative genius locked in with nature, the great powering force behind his palette, which led him to persist, and his friends in the Impressionist movement. And in 1874 they held their first exhibition. And it has transformed our appreciation of nature and the sunlit planet on which we have lived for people all around the world. Not only that, as far as I'm concerned, it inspires me, because we are in awesome times. We have cataclysmic climate change, and we may well have passed the tipping point, and we're told we have to put that on the sideboard, aim at 5%, not 20 or 50% by 2020 reduction, because there's an economic crisis going on. And we have to give the money to the banks, and we have to have tax cuts, and we'll have to no doubt keep ensuring the armaments industry and defence gets its $1 trillion a year in a world where just 6% of that would give every child on the planet a school to go to, fresh water and something to eat every day, because it's the economy, stupid, as two presidents ago said. No, it's not. It's the planet, sensible, which is ultimately the arbiter of what we do, where we go and how we fare. It's the ecology, the knowledge of our own home, that word means. Economy, management of the home, ecology, knowledge. Knowledge comes before proper management. You can't have one without the other. That will determine whether we human beings, inspired by the light, will make it a ongoing, wondrous, planetary experience for the whole of the universe. And this test put the smile on our grandchildren's faces, because like Monet, we refuse to buckle under to the current paradigm of maximum materialist, me now philosophy, and say, no, we're about all people on this planet and our fellow creatures and all who come after us, while honouring those who came before us. That's what's fulfilling about life. And the most extraordinary thing about that is we come from nature. And Monet takes us back to nature, not to wilderness or depauperate nature, but to this human relationship with the natural planet, which, as I said, inspires us and lightens up our own lives. Do you know of a home which puts bulldozers and chainsaws up on the wall instead of pictures of flowers and wildlife and forests? I don't. We have this fantastic bond with the wild planet on which we live, and we must listen to that bond resonating in our own hearts, instead of the outpourings of the stock exchange and the me now of politics, which says, I'll send you a cheque for $500 in the run to this election if only you'll vote for me, and let the planet wait a little bit longer. We need an evolution, a revolution in thinking. Monet gave us his creative genius, and it ended with the unforgettable image we all have of the pond with the lilies. Eternal, peaceful, reflective, many-dimensional, but ultimately beautiful. Because, as he said, take one piece of nature and you're looking at the lot. Well, Monet, let's put that to you. We take you one piece of humanity, and the light you saw, and we can see that in everybody. Our job is to find the key that opens that in everybody, and we human beings will be okay. It's a fantastic exhibition. I thank all those who have made it possible for me and for Peter and for all of us to be here today and to get such joy from this one human being who echoed others around him at the time, but in particular, the phenomenal life force that this planet offers all of us, if only we hear it, and which is not just the key to his genius, but to the key to human success and all future joy on this planet. Thank you, everybody.